Hello there, Commonwealth from me. The Nintendo Switch has been in our hands for over 5 years, and though it is beginning to show its age, especially on a big 4K display, its support of games and quality in handheld gaming is unprecedented. On top of that, we have still not seen through 2019 and 2021 a single hardware upgrade that will result in an enhanced docked experience, and we do believe that that is deliberate. Also that the undocked upgrades were applied before the ones that the docked experience will take advantage of in the future. Still, the dominance from March 3rd, 2017 has to have an end, and normally that one would be at most 2 years away with the current docked hardware specs, meaning that sometime in late 2023 we should see its successor revealed. It is just that I don't think that will be the case based on financial and practical reasons, so be sure to press that like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe. You see, after surpassing 100+ million systems during the 2021 holiday season, the Nintendo Switch is now on the trajectory to become the best-selling dedicated gaming system of all time. Well, that is if it can make it into 2024 without a successor about to be released. Sadly for Nintendo, they have experience from being on the top with two systems at 150 million and 100+ million, and then succeeding both of them around a year apart and ending up with a handheld, the 3DS, that was successful, but still only selling half of the original DS. Even so, the 3DS 75 million total units was a massive salvation compared to the Wii U's abysmal 13.5 million units, the worst selling Nintendo home console of all time. What saved Nintendo back then was the 3DS, but as we all know, there's no longer a separate handheld to back up a failing home console. Just a Nintendo Switch, and if a successor to it fails, it could be even more disastrous than 2012 to 2016 was for Nintendo. Nintendo as a corporation is an expert in innovation, but lacks in power. So if the goal isn't to compete, then why not just stick to your latest success and abandon the 7-year home console lifecycle? And in this regard, it is key to point out that 2022 is the first year when Nintendo is repeating the 2017 and to some degree even the 2019 lineup of their games. Splatoon, Xenoblade, Pokemon, and for the time being still Zelda are all examples of franchises that are getting a second round of brand new mainline releases on the system. And normally this would mark for the near end of the system, but Nintendo insists that we are just in the middle of the Switch's lifecycle. But why is this the case? The answer might be that the second round of releases might actually be round 2 of 3, and we are indeed in for another 5 years of the Nintendo Switch. Or actually scratch that, probably 7 to 8 years, as ending the Switch 5 years from now in 2027 will just cause the next Nintendo system to succeed the Switch alongside the successors of the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series. Thus, from our perspective, it is clear that the Switch has either to end in 2025 or go all the way to 2030 or at least 2029. Right now, after 5 years with undocked system upgrades such as battery life in 2019, and in 2021 better display, external build, stand and even sound, we're still waiting for the Nintendo Switch model that will boost our docked performance and with it, experience. The OLED model was a great handheld upgrade, but if you play on your TV, it was a completely wasted one with one exception. Namely, its new dock, which we know beside its LAN port has the capability of outputting a 4K signal, though not with any of the existing family members. To take advantage of this feature, a more powerful future model is required. Which brings us over to Nintendo's flirting with AMD's Fidelity FX Super Resolution upscaling in Nintendo Switch Sports and the Nvidia hacking incident. Its ultimate outcome being the big Nvidia cross Nintendo DLSS 4K AI upscaling leak, a dump of hardware development information that resulted in that we know that Nintendo's next step is to create hardware that can take advantage of the more and more impressive upscaling technology from Nvidia. It is just a little sus that this massive leak with files and everything surfaced the same week as the 5th anniversary of the Nintendo Switch. Obviously, DLSS or Deep Learning Super Sampling goes back to the idea of the Nintendo Switch Pro, which everyone thought was dead and buried after the OLED model was revealed in July 2021, but perhaps its demise was exaggerated. It goes without saying that a more powerful Switch is required in order to take advantage of DLSS AI upscaling, but this technology alone might allow Nintendo to get away by sticking to the rule that less is more. That is the name of a hair salon I visited in Tokyo in 2019, but also an example of how a little extra juice, say a little under PS4 levels in the next model, could give us in reality a near PS4 Pro experience with the help of Nvidia's DLSS. A model of 1, 2, perhaps even Nintendo Switch 3, but where the previous models, at least some way back, still supported new releases, only with worse performance. You know the smartphone model that we see from Samsung with their line of Galaxy phones, and more so Apple with their iPhones. And there are way too many models at this point. Arlo already highlighted this brilliantly at the end of 2020, but a release cycle that follows their strategy allows Nintendo to benefit from existing and future more powerful Nintendo Switches. A structure where you gradually, instead of instantaneously push consumers to upgrade to a stronger model and have to start from scratch, you instead still support the older Nintendo Switch models. But they will not offer the ultimate experience anymore, just like the PS4 Pro offered for 4 full years, that being late 2016 to late 2020, a better experience than the base model PS4. At some point, the pre-2023 Nintendo Switches might not be able to run new software, but this situation will probably be rare and not apply to Nintendo releases until the magical and previously highlighted 2030. Thus, this is a strategy that can work and turn a Nintendo Switch into the first dual generation system. That is to say, a family of systems that doesn't last the regular at this point 7 years, but 13, perhaps close to 14 years before a proper successor is introduced to replace at that point Nintendo's biggest success of all time. Which brings up the question, why would Nintendo make such a move and distance themselves from the tradition of every past piece of hardware that they have released? The answer is obvious. Money, but also avoiding the hardware succession mistakes of the past. Think DS to the 3DS, and especially Wii to Wii U. And it doesn't have to be that way, as uninterrupted, the current Nintendo Switch family of systems is on the path to reach 150+ million systems sold within the next 2 to 3 years. Just think of how much the next mainline title within each of Nintendo's big franchises could sell within a family where over 150 and even 200 million systems are out on the market. The more you look at it, perhaps the Nintendo Switch is the endgame, and instead of having a fusion Nintendo system, we will see the Switch 2, which plays the exact same games that are found on the Switch 1, the Switch 3 that plays the same games as Switch 2, and so on. It is a business model that allows for endless success and keeping at least a massive part of your existing install base for some time forward. Under this Nintendo Switch Forever scenario, we're talking new sales records for nearly every imaginable Nintendo franchise. In order to first take advantage of 1080p 60fps in open world titles, or upscale 4K for less demanding ones, and further on the horizon as we enter the 2030s, native 4K. It is not, however, a new system, but rather an extension to the long life of the Nintendo Switch. First possibly to keep the Switch alive for 10 years, but more likely longer, as at the 10-year mark it is probable that we will see the next generation of Xbox and PlayStation 7 years after the PS5 and Xbox Series consoles came out. Meaning that Nintendo might intend to switch with the previously mentioned strategy to change the game again, by making their biggest success last 2 console generations instead of 1, namely 14 years, and potentially even longer if the upgrade to a higher model on the performance ladder strategy continues to work from a financial and stockholder perspective. But how would Nintendo possibly be able to place their game across multiple different models with different hardware specifications? Simple. From say 2023, doing the same porting/downgrading magic that Saber Interactive and Panic Button have been doing with third-party titles such as Doom Eternal, Skyrim and The Witcher 3 on the 2017 Switch and 2019 Nintendo Switch Lite. Only this time with Nintendo's biggest first-party titles. A little magic so that the games can still be played on the 2017, 2019 and 2021 Nintendo Switch models. Or actually, just follow the PS4 Pro and PS4 lifecycle. Same disc, only outputting a different resolution and frame rate on the screen when inserted to the 2 different models within the same family of systems. An experiment from 2016, which Nintendo can greatly extend with even more Pro Plus and Plus 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 models in the future to continue this never-ending chapter of success in Nintendo's long and turbulent history of financial rise, fall, and rise again. Nintendo can easily take advantage of the hardware for possibly even 10 years from the upload of this video. So instead of a generational new system structure, which Nintendo has followed up to now, we see a generational family structure, since the Nintendo Switch could be on its path to become one big, ever-growing family, keeping most Nintendo Switch owners within this family for perhaps even decades to come from now, adding slight but at the same time significant upgrades for every new model, just as we have seen so far with unlocked features that we have gone over throughout this video, but from now on, better docked performance with the next models. Not very different from what may be the future goal for Valve's Steam Deck, only that it has a much further way to go, including with fixing stick drift, even though Nintendo also has some fixing to do there. Anyway, the best way for Nintendo forward is to learn from Apple and Samsung and cash in, as the timing for keeping this success is now or never. Also that the Nintendo Switch can last forever, well at least to reach the beginning of the 2030s. And after this mind-blowing eye-opener of a video, we would greatly appreciate it if you could like it and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and press the notification bell to not miss any future Nintendo Switch videos like this one. Finally, a big thanks goes to all our loyal patreon.com/CommonRealm patrons, and in particular to our royal producer Charles. You rock, and please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.